And we are live. Welcome, everyone. My name is Niki Lopez of Niki Lopez Creative, and you're watching The Circle, where every Tuesday, 8:30 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm talking to artists, activists, creative entrepreneurs, people just doing great things in the world today. And today I have a very special guest and creative friend. We have George Gadson. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Nikki, for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So George Gadson, he's lots of things, but right now we're going to focus on him as a public artist and art consultant. So for those, joining us, we're live in a few places. We're live on Facebook under Niki Lopez Creative, the 1310 Gallery, and the Circle Group. We're also live on YouTube. So, yeah, welcome. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. Thank you for being here. I know you got a lot going on, so I do appreciate you taking that time. So
it's my pleasure. Yeah, it's my pleasure.
I'm trying to think because I can't even remember how many years ago I met you.
I'd say probably maybe 10.
Yeah, I think so.
Was it the AIE, the Artists Entrepreneur Institute? Was it that? Or
yeah. Well, you know what? There was a shop that had some art show, because I remember talking to you, because it's like we meet so briefly, and then anytime I've asked you questions, you're just so open to share and just kind of warm. But I remember having a conversation. It was some art show. This lady had she had like an art show. It had art pieces and like decorative pieces, and she was having an art show there. I can't remember her name offhand, but yeah. So, and we have a couple people that's popping in. We have Valerie saying hello, Nikki and George.
Is that Valerie, the architect?
Oh no, right. This is Valerie. She's a singer. She's a creative. She's out of Virginia, but I've known Valerie like at least 30 plus years.
Wow, that's great.
So, yes. We have a couple of people from the Facebook group saying hello and good evening. So if you're in the Facebook group, I can't see your name. So if you want to put your name in the comment, that would be awesome. We also have Rod Hagwood, Robin Haynes. Oh, was it Robin Haynes Merrill? It wasn't Robin Haynes Merrill. I think it'll come to me. Something Clary. She had a shop with her husband. It was like they had furniture, they had art, and there was an art show.
Robin Merrill, her and her husband?
No, it wasn't Robin Merrill. It was, I think it's like I'm not sure. But I'm just happy to know you and to still keep, be in contact. Here with my son Elijah. Thank you for being here. And Deborah Kerr. Hello.
Oh, hi, Deborah Kerr.
And we have Trina Slade Burks. So a lot of creatives online today. So let's jump in, because I know we have a lot to it's Connie, who is from the Facebook group. We also have Scott Strawbridge saying hello. So let's dive into it. What sparked your creative journey?
Wow. Actually, how I got into art, back after I graduated from college, and I don't have, most people don't know I don't have a degree in art. But when I graduated from college, I went into the banking business, and this was in 1975. So you guys can do the math and you'll know how old I am.
I was but I'm not.
So going into the banking business, back then I was the only person of color in management. And so the stress was a little bit intense in that I felt like a fish in a fishbowl. Mm-hmm. And, because those were the dynamics back then. And I said I needed a hobby, something to get away from the stress. So I tried, gluing airplanes together, and that didn't quite do it. And needlepoint, and that didn't quite do it. So I enrolled in an art class with senior citizens on the weekends from 9 to 12 at Hillsborough Community College in Tampa, and look forward to it and to learn how to paint and to relax. And that's what sparked my creativity. Fell in love with it, the relaxation of it, and discovered I had some hidden talent and committed to just really fine tuning it, and the rest is history.
Wow, that's awesome. I did see that you're self-taught, and that's great because everyone has different ways to kind of get to where they're at. So I love that. Absolutely. We have a couple of, we have Michael D. Moss, Art Box Club. Hi, Nikki and George. We also have another person from the group saying hello to George and Nikki. Thank you. Thank you. So I know we have some slides that I'm so excited. I can't wait to get into them. But one of the things that I noticed, a lot of your work centers around Black people, families, history. Why is that important to you?
Well, it's interesting. It wasn't by design that I did this. It just sort of morphed into that. And I know that our history in our community is important. And at the same time, I also know that unless we take ownership of our history, we then won't be able to pass it down to other generations. It's unfortunate that some of our kids really don't have an interest in knowing about some historical figures and how we got to where we are today. So, that aspect of it is what I enjoy and I'm committed to do. But the other part of that too is, making certain that when we're no longer around, that others can hear and see, the work that we do as it relates to preserving our history. So that doesn't mean that I don't do other types of work, and I share this with you because, in being transparent, years ago, one of the things that I made certain that I was not pigeonholed as a quote unquote Black artist, that all he does is Black art, because I didn't want to be pigeonholed in that aspect. And one way in which I communicated that was I got certain commissions and certain works that were not necessarily related to Black art at all. And so hence I had a friend of mine, she was at an opening actually at the Urban League here in Broward County. I had done a sculpture, which is not a part of this slide presentation, but it was very different from my typical works. And she said to me, if I were not here at the opening, I would have never known that this was your sculpture. And I went, perfect. So when appropriate, I definitely do work that relates to the African American diaspora, the African diaspora. But then again, there's other types of work, abstract works that I've done. Like, look at the sculpture behind me with that's a welded piece that I did that, that's not necessarily Afrocentric.
Yeah, and I saw like you did some Christmas ornaments for the White House, and you've done some stuff with I'm bad with sports, but
with the Super Bowl.
With the Super Bowl.
I did two sculptures for the South Florida Super Bowl host committee, the kicker, the quarterback, and then Ray Lewis when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Of course, before that, when the Ravens won the Super Bowl, I did a sculpture for him then, and then also when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Nice. And we have I see Ashley saying hello, thank you for this. I don't know what the sorry, maybe because she's just popping in. And Valerie laughing at my lack of sport knowledge.
Well, if don't feel bad, because my father was the captain of his football team in high school, and my growing up, he wanted me to kind of be the same in terms of sports. And I went out for the football team, and I didn't go to practice purposely
Mm-hmm.
so that I wouldn't make the team. So when I was able to do the sculpture for the Super Bowl in 95 and 99, I kind of chuckled and said, well, Dad, I'm playing football, but in a different way.
In a different way, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, Valerie is saying you're not alone. What? How do you define the connection between art and community?
Well, I believe art in a number of ways helps define the community. And at the same time, I believe that when given an opportunity, the community participating, community engagement, and this is, I really love that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
When the community is allowed to engage in the art making, it creates within that community a sense of, even a greater sense of place and a sense of belonging. And it sometimes allows members in the community to discover history and stories that were maybe never even told, or they were told, but I don't believe that they were told enough. So integrating art into the community can be, if you will, an opportunity for a community to regenerate itself, or be rebirthed and re-energized because of the stories. I mean, that last session you had a few weeks ago, when folks were on and they were telling us the stories. It's about Fort Lauderdale, and of course the Providence Hospital. I mean, it was quite informative,
Mm-hmm.
and things that I found out, and others that were listening, that makes you proud
Mm-hmm.
of who you are, and make you proud of where you came from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So that's art can do that right in the community.
Yes, yes. And since we're here, could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with the Y and the community of Sistrunk for as it relates to art and community?
Sure. As most, as some folks know, and as folks hear more about the project, the Providence Hospital was the only facility that, uh, before integration, that was able to serve and treat, African Americans or blacks, medically, because of not being able to do it at the Broward General Hospital at that time. So the site where the LA Lee, the new facility is being built, is where I'm inside the building. I'm creating a work of art that will seek to capture some of the history in an abstract way, knowing that the site itself, and this is just my opinion, and others may disagree, and that's perfectly okay. Um, the building that was there before the new building being built now, the building that was just torn down, uh, was on a site, and it's the site, from my perspective, I feel that is significant and that has a historical significance, not so much the building itself. So, but at the same time, the activities that took place in Providence Hospital are important, because we know Dr. Mizell, Dr. Sistrunk, and other doctors were there to serve the Black community. So I wrestled with what would I do for this, work of art that will go in the LA League, in the new facility, the new Y, and I uh, was telling a reporter this morning that one of the things that I do, or this afternoon, that I really, when I get projects, I actually take time to pray, and I then I do my homework, because I believe faith without works is dead. So I have to do my part. So I start doing some research and sort of introspection, going to the historical society and things of that sort, and really start saying, okay, what can be done in an abstract way as not so literal in an abstract way that somehow will tie into the the provenance. And so I start thinking in terms of the DNA and the XY chromosome. And it's interesting. I don't think I could ever have been a doctor because, you know, in reading some of this stuff, it was like Greek to me. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I was looking for some suggested forms that I could possibly use as inspiration. Looked at different medical icons and images, like, you know, you've seen the snake that's wrapped around that looks like a cross, and the snake that's wrapped around the and I think that kind of goes back to when in the Old Testament, when and Moses had the rod and the snake, and people looked up to the snake and what have you. Anyway, so decided that I would do a combination abstract, of course, of creating a stethoscope. When you look at it, initially you may not recognize that it is a stethoscope because it's not as literal as a real stethoscope. But then at the same time, when you look at the XY chromosomes in with the DNA and all of those things, you see components of that the chromosome with the bars going across. So I've combine all those together, and the narrative of course will speak to, you know, what went on there at the hospital in terms of medicine, and then there will be a final determination of certain words that will go on the sculpture as well, the bars across the chromosome that really speak to, you know, health and things of that nature as it relates to our community. So that's and it's to be determined. There potentially are some bronze medallions that may be a part of that installation as well. At the end of the day, you know, my client, the Y, has the final say in terms of what the final piece would actually look like with based upon my suggestions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you, thank you. And I see, and just for any, because you did mention the conversation, there's more information on the project. If you go to what'syourelephant.org/Sankofa Arts Project, you'll also see the link that George was talking about, where he goes a little bit more into his piece. We talk about the whole project and some of the elders who grew up going to the Y or Providence Hospital and Victory Theater and the whole project. So definitely check that out. So we have here, okay, we have Rod Hagwood. He said, I was the reporter, but Niki's getting some good, great quotes. I might steal them.
Oh yes, that actually was the reporter I was talking
Yes,
to earlier. Yes.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. I don't think we have any problem with that. And so, oh, okay, I'm looking at the group. So it was Gabriel. Gabe said, awesome project. And then it was Dr. Kimray Mizell Hill saying hello to Nikki and George. And Dr. Naomi Ruth Cobb, who's also saying hello to Nikki and George.
Yes.
Yes. So they're watching from the Facebook group, The Circle. And we have Carson. Hello, hello. Thanks for joining us. So, okay, so let's see. What does the term Black history mean to you, and why is it important?
Preservation. I'll say that preservation. I believe that we are the ones that have to tell our story, and no, and we tell our story so that others can know where we came from. I think it's so critical in that aspect. How can I say this? If we don't tell our story the way it should be told, someone else will take the liberty to tell our story, and it may not be the way it should be told.
Mm-hmm.
So, Black history in that aspect is very important that we take ownership of it, that we be proud of where we came from. You know, folks, I came from a small town in Central Florida. Today, the population is 5,999, and we have 2 traffic lights. So we're not a very big city. And humble beginnings, and I'm very proud to be from Fort Meade, Florida. I am. And despite what we all have had gone through in a small southern town, nonetheless, we have a rich history. And my parents were blue collar workers, not educated at all with a college degree. But one of the things that my mom and dad said, education is your freedom. So telling our story to others who maybe don't know about our stories, and there are other ethnic groups that would want to hear our story. I have a very close friend who is Jewish, and she, particularly recently, since this Black Lives Matter issue has really been in the forefront, she all of a sudden realized, she says, George, now I understand what it means when you tell me that when you grow up, you experience this, but when you grow up, and even today, you you put your driver's license and your insurance information over your visor. So my point I'm making there is, as we tell our story as Black people and what we experience, the good, the bad, the ugly, we have such great stories that are stories of triumph and stories of victory and stories of success. People need to hear that story,
Mm-hmm.
not just in our community, but in other communities as well. So, and there's a way to tell the story in a manner that doesn't alienate anyone, it doesn't ostracize anyone. If anything, it enlightens. And I do believe that when we tell our story, and those who are willing to listen will find some areas of commonality, which then breaks down the barriers of hatred.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that, and I love that you said that you have a Jewish friend. I was listening, that's interested in that story. The other day, I was listening to a Zoom call, and they were talking about the wait-ins and the racism with the water and all this. And there was a curator, I forgot her name, but there's somewhere up north, Florida, and it was a Jewish Holocaust museum that did an exhibition for Black History Month. And I thought that was really important because a lot of times, um, we learn in school about the Holocaust and the impact, but we don't learn our Holocaust
That's correct.
in the United States.
That's
So,
correct.
and I thought it was really powerful for someone to, who, we're kind of okay with talking about those things and giving that space to say, let me use my platform and leverage and privilege to highlight, Black people in this country. So,
Well,
um,
there are some individuals who have seen the Holocaust Museum in Miami. It's very moving, very powerful,
mhm,
and our story, the crossing over the waters and coming to this country and being treated, inhumanely. There are people who know that story,
mhm,
uh, and I don't think the story should ever not be told. At the
mhm,
same time, I think the story should also be told of those who, despite the odds, after coming to this country, raised a family. And well, long story short, we now have our first female Black vice president of the United States.
mhm,
So my point I'm making is, the story is not just about the tragedy, but the story is about the triumph and the
mhm,
success, and overcoming and not letting setbacks stop you.
mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. We have Carson saying exactly. Um, and we also have Andrew, another artist, says, late here, sorry, loving the conversation. Yes, absolutely. So let's jump into the slides because we're gonna pop them over to the side and you can kind
Okay.
of walk. Do you want to give us a little bit of what we're gonna be doing?
Yes, the work, as Nikki mentioned, the work that I do, it varies, but this is preserving history, and this occurred to me, I guess, about maybe 3 years ago. And if you can, Nikki, just go to the next slide. I've been commissioned to do quite a number of works of art in our communities in South Florida. And just want to start off by saying that, the definition of history being the records of past events and time, especially in connection with the human race, the acts, ideas, and events that will or can shape the course of the future. There's also another saying, a quote by a guy, Levi Strauss, that says, art is proof that anything has ever happened in the past. So whenever you hear of wars that take place, those companies that countries rather that are taking over other countries, they go and they attack their art because the art tells a good portion of that particular cultural's history, a country's history. So I just wanted to keep the context of what this all is all about in terms of the works that I'm about to show you. So if we may go to the next slide, please. The Buffalo Soldier. This particular sculpture I did several years ago. Um, I was, and those of you who know the story of the Buffalo Soldier, when the slaves were free, they joined the army. I think the wages were like $13 a month, living in substandard tents and wearing substandard clothing and had substandard equipment. And their job and their role basically was to fight against the Native Americans in order to protect the land of the white settlers. And they got the name Buffalo Soldier because of the veracity and the manner in which they fought. They fought like the buffalo, and of course their hair was, had the texture, if you will, of the hair on the buffalo as well. So the Indians or the Native Americans really called them the Buffalo Soldier. And I was inspired to do this sculpture. It's a limited edition that because of what the Buffalo Soldier stood for, tenacity, courage, despite substandard circumstances or substandard equipment. I mean, they fought like crazy. They had courage. They were bold, strong, uh, courageous men. So courage is not the absence of fear, but the conqueror of it. And we know that how successful they were in just really uh, fighting. So this is a piece that I did some time ago that basically captures a little segment of our history in the military of how African Americans served in the military. Next slide, please.
Oops.
Several years ago, the city of Delray Beach reached out to me and asked if I would create this sculpture of Mr. C. Spencer Pompey. I never had an opportunity to meet Mr. Pompey. He was well up in age and had passed away. But the thing about Mr. Pompey was he was a community activist. He was loved and revered by, everyone, blacks, whites, you name it. I mean, he was just that type of a man. He was very good friends with Thurgood Marshall, and he was instrumental in actually Thurgood Marshall coming to Palm Beach County and winning a court battle to get equal pay for black teachers. So this sculpture is permanent in the city hall there at in Delray Beach. But this is another way in which I captured a man who made a difference in his town, in his city, and by having the connections with Thurgood Marshall, who was one of our Supreme Court justices and who came and fought and won the battle against for equal pay for black teachers. Next slide, please. The Tuskegee Airmen. We all know about the Tuskegee Airmen. They were the first African American military aviators in the United States and the armed forces. This is a sculpture that I created, and actually I donated it to the collection at the African American Research Library and Culture Center here in Fort Lauderdale. The Tuskegee Airmen, they were, subjected to discrimination. but they still soared, if you will, to use the metaphor, and we have over the years have seen these men being honored for their bravery and their skills, etc., and being a vital part of our military. Next slide, please. Dr. Blanche Ely, Ely High School in Pompano. I think this was in 1998, I believe. The Ely Education Foundation approached me to do a bust of Dr. Blanche Ely. They acquired, the Ely Foundation acquired Dr. Ely's home, which today is a wonderful museum that really captures how she lived, etc. And Dr. Ely, back in her day, when she was becoming educated, if you will, going to school, if I remember my history correctly, she attended Columbia University. And folks, that was back in the 40s. So for a black woman to do what Dr. Ely did, and to rise to the level where she was influential as an educator, that said a lot. Um, when they asked me to do this sculpture, uh, they had photographs of her, and I was fortunate to go to her home and to really get a feel and a sense of how she lived, and which is what helped me. And those artists who are are listening can relate to this. You can kind of pick up certain vibes, if you will. And she was such a lady, elegant. Her home was like phenomenal. And it just really helped me to really bring out her essence and her character. But this lady, she was a major educator here in Broward County, and she should continue to be remembered. Next slide, please.
Well, we have Carson said, amazing work, George, and all important stories behind these pieces.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Oh, this is Mr. Henry Belafonte. This should have gone after the Buffalo Soldier, but nonetheless, the city of Coral Springs had a MLK celebration, and not long after I had created the Buffalo Soldier, Harry Belafonte was the keynote speaker, and they asked me to present this to him. This is actually a photograph transferred onto canvas uh, uh, that was presented to Mr. Belafonte. Next slide, please. This is called The Bridge. This is at the African American Research Library and Cultural Center in Fort Lauderdale. In 2002, when the facility was being built, I was approached by Gail Butler, who's one of the community leaders here. At that time, she worked for Auto Nations, and she asked me, she said, George, is there anything being done as an art piece for the African American Research Library? I said, well, yeah, I believe there is inside. She says, no, I mean outside. So so she said, well, I'm going to arrange to have a meeting with you, myself, Sam Morrison, who at that time was the director for all the Broward County libraries. So we met, and that's when the ball started. So when I spoke with Sam, I said, Sam, this sculpture that I'm doing, what would you like for it to communicate? He says, well, I'd like for it to be viewed as a bridge because of the relationships that have begun to establish here in Broward County with Africa. So at the same time, I'd like for it also to be uh, a springboard, if you will, that tells the story of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And if you notice here on the right, on the side of the sculptures, is a semblance, and I call it artistic license, of what the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama looks like. If now this bridge, there are 5 bridges. There's economics, education, geography, culture, and technology. Whew, I could believe I remember those from
Wow.
back then. But so each of those particular bridges, if you will, are represented. There's a mouse. There's a young boy that has a book, and he has an A plus. That's the educational part. Geography. There's a country of Africa, and on one side, and the country of the U.S. on the other. There's also a ballerina shoe, a paintbrush, and a treble clef note for culture. And of course,
Mm,
the Adinkra
wow.
symbol, um, that is, this is just sort of happened. Uh, the day I was came to install it, this Adinkra symbol, which means learning, wisdom. There's three meanings to it, and I can't remember them all now. But this particular symbol is also on the building, which I really didn't know that was going to happen, but it's just phenomenal. If we can go to the next slide, please. I believe it shows a little bit more of the history that was. This is me in my studio at the time. This is a model, a maquette that was about maybe 7 or 8 inches in height, uh, creating the concept before actually going to actually creating the larger piece. The next slide, please.
Oh, we have Connie, another artist, saying thank you so much for sharing these stories.
Thank you, Connie. It's my pleasure.
Yes, and let me see. Oh, and Naomi, Dr. Naomi Ruth Cobb saying phenomenal.
So, so the next slide, I think, is the one that yes. So if
Mm,
you see that this is the uh, again, how do I weave Black history into this? The Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, the Bloody Sunday in 1965. So if you notice the bridge, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and what it looks like, and then of course my sculpture has a semblance of that arch, if you will. So as Mr. Morrison mentioned, that the Edmund Pettus Bridge was the beginning, if you will, of the civil rights movement. So too he views the African American Research Library in the community where it is being a bridge to all those different areas that I mentioned: education, technology, business. Uh, now I'm not going to remember them all, but we stated them earlier. So that's the connection there. Now I'd like to also say too, though, that in the African culture, the drum is used as a means of communication.
mm-hmm.
So if you see the drum, you can actually see through the drum. So that also was part of the concept and the design, and bringing that aspect of the African history, if you will, and how the drums are used as a means of communication. Next slide, please. These are now I when we believe in something, we are driven by it. So obviously, we all know Dr. Martin Luther King and Miss Coretta Scott King and those who were marching alongside him. We are where we are today because of him, and it all started at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Next slide, please. And these are other folks: Dr. Garvis, Marcus Garvey, Mary McLeod Bethune, Dr. King, of course, and Rosa Parks. Individuals that, you know, they were trailblazers, and they paved the way for us in so many ways. Next slide, please. Family Roots. This was a sculpture that I did for the city of Pompano, the E. Padlocking Community Center. What I loved about this was, when I did my community outreach, and this is where, Nikki, we talked earlier about how community engagement is so important,
Mm-hmm.
and how art can being a part of that. So when I reached out to, I think, about 8 different homeowners associations, I tried to get from them what type of artwork they would like to see and what they would like for it to communicate. And and then in so doing that, I look for a common thread that then from there the inspiration comes. And I tell folks when I speak with them, I hear what you're saying and I hear what Jane is saying, or Sue or John, but I can't guarantee whatever one of you saying is going to be a part of the art. It's a bit challenging, but I look for those common threads. And this is what resoundingly I heard people say without them really saying it. She says, "We're here in Pompano, and we're all in some way are related.
Mm.
Migrated from either the Bahamas or from the Carolinas, or and they said to me, we don't want our kids to forget their family roots." Bingo. That's when I heard that, I went, okay, I got it. So this sculpture is bronze. It's about 11 feet in height. That includes the pedestal as well. But here's what we all know is that our family in our community, there are unfortunate statistics in terms of the number of households that are broken apart, and either it's a single mom or single dad, and the kid ends up growing up without a mom or dad in the house. And some kids end up, and I do a lot of work with kids in foster care. Some kids end up in foster care because they just have no mom or dad that um, would take the time to really be their mom or dad. So our family, our black family, is important. And I understand circumstances happen. That people have to get separated or divorced. So trust me, I'm very sensitive and aware of that. But wherever we can preserve the family, even the family that is not biological, but our community as a family, taking care of each other. It takes a village to raise a child. So I just can't say enough about that.
Mm-hmm.
Next slide, please.
I love how this piece is just like it's just melting into the roots of the sculpture. It's just
Yes,
kind of
yes.
like evolving.
And the base of the sculpture is actually, if you were to go up close, the roots that extend from the base, uh,
Mm.
from the base of the sculpture.
We have Valerie saying amazing sculpture, and then someone in the group. It's so nice to see many of your pieces that show the important relationship to Black history. You're such an important artist in South Florida. Blessings. That's from Lorna L'Esperance.
Oh
L'Esperance.
yes, yes. I know, Lorna.
Yes.
I know that. It's a pleasure.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Next
And
slide, please.
absolutely family amazing. Yes.
Here's a favorite, one of my favorite quotes by Marcus Garvey. A people without the knowledge of their past, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. That's pretty deep.
Mm.
So all the more reason why we should tell our children and everybody we know, particularly our kids, about their history, about who they are and where they came from, so that they can grow roots and be strong and dig in. I, I, I love telling this story to kids when I talk to them. We all are fearfully and wonderfully made, and there's more than one Nikki in the world. Okay, but there's a specific Nikki that
Mhm.
here today that is not like any other Nikki in the whole world, and because of that, she's a limited edition, and she's special. And then when we start telling our kids these types of stories about where they came from and their family roots and this and that and what have you, I mean, they can walk proud and be proud of who they are. And you heard me say earlier, folks, I am proud I'm from Fort Meade, Florida. I was raised in a wooden frame house. I know what it was like to go outside to the bathroom in an outhouse, because that was my job as a kid before going to school, to empty the night pots. And I am not here tonight to say I'm ashamed of it. I'm very proud of where I came from. I am who I am because of where I came from. And I wouldn't be able to say that today if my parents in some way made us feel ashamed of who we are, or ashamed of our past and ashamed of our culture. So knowing who we are gives us stability. Knowing who we are as a people gives us roots and foundations that come the wind, wave, blow, what have you, we can be strong and stand. So this is obviously, you can tell this is one of my favorite quotes, right? Mark Harvey. Next slide, please. Lift every voice. I was approached by Florida Memorial several years ago. I think this was in 2005, I believe it was, to create a sculpture to go in their lobby. Now, when I do art that goes in public spaces, I really try to do some research so that the work has what I call a sense of place. Well, in my research, I determined that Florida Memorial College at that time was located in the panhandles of Florida. And in the late, I think, 1800s, James Weldon Johnson and his brother, they were writing and finishing up the song, Lift Every Voice and Sing. Well, Florida Memorial Glee Club, back then, when they were finishing the song, they meaning James Weldon Johnson, and he and his brother, the Florida Memorial Glee Club sang the song for the very first time. So, knowing that this was going to go in the Lou Ross Performing Arts Center, my elegant lady there in an evening gown, I just knew that it was very appropriate to have that figure. At the same time, they have jazz concerts there. Milton Mustafa was, one of the jazz musicians that at one time played there. And for those who read music, and by the way, I don't, but the notes starting from the bottom of her feet, going up to her shoulders or close to her shoulders, those are about the first 5 or 6 bars, if you will, of the song "Lift Every Voice and Sing." So this sculpture is in bronze, and it's with the base, etc. It's about 9 feet tall, and the sculpture alone weighs about 1,200 pounds.
Wow.
I'm still seeing a therapist for my back.
Valerie's saying breathtaking.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Next slide, please. And here's James Weldon Johnson and the score, if you will, of the song that he and his brother wrote, the Lift Every Voice and Sing.
We have a question from Rod. Is it me, or does Lift Every Voice have a different look and texture than the other works?
It has a very good observation. It has a very different texture. Yes, it does. If you notice, like the portraits themselves, they're much more fine-tuned and much more detailed because it had to capture the essence and the spirit of that person. Wherein this sculpture of Lift Every Voice was very rough, if you will, and it just translated well and nicely. It not as smooth, but yet there was a delicacy about her, in terms of her poise, her pose, if you will. But very good observation, Rod. Next slide, please. Here is the actual. This was actually done in plaster, a new medium that normally I create the sculptures in clay, but this was done in plaster. And here's the model on the left-hand side, the smaller model. Next slide, please. Here's a substitute model. But I showed this to you to show you the process. Once the sculpture is completed, then a mold is made, several molds. Several molds are made, and then wax is poured inside each of the molds. Once the wax is poured inside the molds, then the wax Now you have, in this case, I think there were probably 15 different molds. So you have 15 different wax pieces that now you see me down on the floor here at the left, putting those pieces back together. And, I was just messing around with me standing behind her posing there. But these pieces were put back together for the purpose at the foundry of really now looking at the piece as a whole, and then determining which piece, how we were going to cut the pieces, because they would have to be dipped into a vat of refractory type material that was silica sand and a number of different things mixed together, that the wax then would be covered with it, and that ultimately ends up going into a oven and baked. And when that sand and all of those, the composition is baked, the wax then melts out. So if you've heard the phrase the lost wax process, this is an example of what takes place there. And maybe at another time I'll have a different slide to show you when the lost wax process takes place. The shell now is hollow on the inside, and it's a life lesson that I think is so important as it relates to how we live our lives. When the shell is baked and the wax melts out, the shell becomes very hard, like a ceramic wall, very, very hard. And the reason why it has to be that way is because the bronze or the heat is going to come. The heat, the bronze, molten bronze is heated to about 2,800 degrees, poured inside the hollow shell. If the hollow shell is not ready, if the hollow shell is not cured and stable and hard and all that is necessary to withstand the heat, and we've had this happen on a couple of occasions, bronze goes everywhere and it just completely just messes up everything. So it is with life. Our lives, we prepare ourselves, do what we need to do to make ourselves ready for when the heat comes, because we all at some point in our lives will face some days when the heat is on, and we face some disappointments and some challenges, etc. But if we have been cured and prepared, when the heat comes, we'll withstand the heat. Next slide, please. Just another view of the lady. Lift every voice. Give you a sense of scale.
Wow. It's magnificent.
Next slide, please. I had more hair then, too. This sculpture, the story behind this is interesting. For those of you who are business owners, one of the things that I strongly encourage is networking. I had left my studio, and the last thing I wanted to do was to go to another social event, but I did. It was during Black History Month, actually, that one of the commissioners, I think former Commissioner Barbara DeBow, was having an event at the Elks, and on display were photographs of Black Fort Lauderdale. And while there, this gentleman in the middle, Mr. Bruce Wago, he came over to me and says, "George, did you know that there is a myth that Black people can't swim?" I said, "Well, yes, I do know that. And the myth is that because of our body mass that we can't swim because we sink, the muscles and all that stuff." He says, "Well, I'd like for you to," and he's the president of the International Swimming Hall of Fame. And so I didn't get offended. And, I'm not the kind of person that walks around with a chip on my shoulder and kind of want to fly off the handle. I just answered him honestly. I said, "Yes, I am aware of that myth." So he invited me to the International Swimming Hall of Fame. And I followed up as he asked me to. For those business owners, someone says, "Follow up," you follow up. I followed up, and within a week, I had a contract to create this sculpture.
Wow.
And the sculpture tells the story. And he showed me when I at the museum how the history shows that Africans were divers of pearls,
Mm.
and so the Sankofa bird that you see here, which is an African Adinkra symbol, which represents looking back in the past and using the past to plan, if you will, for the future. So on one side of this sculpture, it shows the African mother putting the child in the water to learn how to swim, and then he's growing up, becoming an adult, and he's diving for pearls, and he brings the pearl and he presents it to the Sankofa bird. On the opposite side, this is the view side that we view here. You'll see the Olympic rings that are there in sort of the center of the sculpture. Well, just below that is a swimmer that has the butterfly pose, and that represents Anthony Nesty, who was the first person of African descent to win an Olympic gold medal in swimming. So Black
Mm.
people can swim.
I've been learning to swim with diversity in aquatics and let us swim. And, Thaddeus, the coach, often talks about that, how, this belief that we don't swim, but we were so connected with water. We were the divers
Correct.
and those things. So we have another question. Um,
Yes.
Rod is asking, what's the name of the sculpture called, the one in the Swimming Hall of Fame?
This one actually is the Sankofa Award, and they present it to various uh, swimmers in competition. So it's the Sankofa Award.
Nice. We have Shani saying, beautiful sculpture.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sankofa is unsishrunk in a number of different ways. If this is an aerial view, but there's a plaza there on Sistrunk, I think near 9th and 10th Avenue, that this is the design that I did, and I had, of course, a fabricator, a general contractor, to actually place a design in this plaza. But this, if you look at an aerial view, you'll actually see the head. If you look the photograph on the right of the slide, you'll see the head of the bird, and then the round black spot there is actually um, the egg, and then to the left here, then you see the egg, the legs of the bird, and then the planter. Actually, the planter is sort of the body of the bird. And I want to give a shout out to Scott Strawbridge if he's still here. This is one of his properties that he developed, and he was very much a part of this whole transformation, if you will, taking place with what he did with this wonderful living space for seniors.
Yeah, I'm smiling because when I told him you're going to be on, he's like, "Oh, he did the Sankofa bird."
Yeah, Scott was he's instrumental in making that happen. Yep, for
Mhm.
sure.
Absolutely.
Next slide, please. And there's the Sankofa bird. Now, there's a group of individuals, there's a group called the Trailblazers of Broward County, a very active group, and they had approached me, can't remember now, maybe, oh yeah, 2016. I remember because that's the year my mom passed away, 2016. But actually, prior to that, it was 6 years before that that there was discussion about doing some kind of a monument to celebrate the history in Black Fort Lauderdale. Now we all know that the history is so vast that it would be difficult to capture 100 years of history on one sculpture. So what was done here on the plaque, we identified various pillars in the community that were really stable pillars for the growth of the Black community, places of worship, um, education, business, and I can't remember a few others, but there were a couple there was one person's name mentioned here who was, I think, Mrs. Hewlett, who was an educator. So this plaque gives homage, if you will, to the history and those pioneers and trailblazers here in Fort Lauderdale. The thing, as well as using the Sankofa bird, is using the past of what we know, and we're able to communicate about the history of Black Fort Lauderdale, looking back in the past, and hopefully our young people and those that come after us can look and see this, and then look forward to the future, and know that their future can be and is bright. So that's the concept behind this particular monument.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we have Scott. He said, "Proud of our work together, George."
Yes, it was great working with you, Scott. Definitely.
We also have Valerie. Finish watching recording. Thank you for sharing your gifts with the world. So inspiring. Much love to you and Nikki. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. So yes, if you're tuning in, you got to go. This is going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on Facebook, and later in the week, it will be on your favorite podcast. Scott is saying, proud of my Trailblazer Award that George made.
Oh yeah, that's right. You do. Yeah, the Trailblazers honored Scott for his community work, and he received a miniature version of the Sankofa bird.
Nice, nice.
This is Dr. Kathleen Wright, the Broward County School Board building downtown. The links, Women of Broward County, they are such an awesome group. They actually did fundraising in collaboration with I think the Broward Education Foundation, and they commissioned me to create the sculpture of Dr. Blanche Ely. Dr. Ely was the first Black to be elected to the school board, female. I believe she was a Delta. And those of you who are listening, if I get my history wrong, please, feel free to correct me. And unfortunately, she was actually on a plane, traveling out to on a business. I think she was going to a conference, and the plane unfortunately crashed, and all the survivors, were killed. But this was done in 2016 as well. Give you a sense of scale. At the foundry here, the left-hand photograph shows me standing at her, we're standing, and here she's probably about 9 feet in height or more. Wow. So she's on a pedestal that's about 5 feet in height. So Dr. Wright rather, is about 14, 15 feet in height. So the links to Broward County, they were, I credit them for this, and again, I'm thankful for them reaching out to me to do this piece. But this is another way of capturing history. The first Black woman to be elected to the Broward County School Board.
Absolutely.
Your future is what you make it. We all have a future. It's what we make it. Our future is, and I heard something recently, our future is not out there. Our future is inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we just have to grab it and make it happen. Next slide, please. Whatever your life's work is, do it well. A man should do his job so well that the living, the dead, and the unborn could do it no better. Dr. Martin Luther King.
I like that. I haven't heard of that one. Wow.
Next slide, please. And this is yours truly. When he was about 4 years old, I did this sculpture from a photograph. and this piece is called Little Preacher Boy.
Oh, I didn't know that was you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Let me go
So
here.
that completes my presentation. Thank you, Niki.
Yes, absolutely. That was just amazing. That's amazing. I love it. We have let me just queue up. There's a couple more things. So we do have some questions. I love the work, and I love the fact of like your work, covers people that we're familiar with historically as well as just locally. I don't think I've ever been in a space where I've, learned so much about the local history and, local legacies. And I think that's a really a beautiful thing about being in this area, being so close to Sistrunk, and seeing all the art. And you've done so much work around South Florida. So it's
Well,
amazing.
I'm honored, and I'm pleased that I'm able to do it. It's just, it's just in my DNA, and where and when I can, I really like doing it. Yeah, yeah.
We did have a question from Gabe. It's a little veers a little bit from the slides. He says, in your opinion, how can we use art to heal or art as a tool to heal social justice?
Very good question. I think it's a combination, David, if I may. Uh, Art can be a vehicle to allow you to tell the story, and I'll share this with you. I'll be very transparent, and I haven't done it yet, but it's incubating, and it relates to this, and knowing that there's a polarization that is in our country, and knowing that there's some friction. I'm saying, I really want to create art, and that causes people, both black and white, yellow, green, whatever, to really look inside and examine themselves, and art that will not cause a black person to hate the whites or whites or black, but an art piece that would say, okay, wait, hold on. I'm feeling this, and this person is feeling the same thing, and we're two different races.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's communicate. If even taking, um, I believe in experiential learning, where say for example, you get a group of adults in a room. In this case, we're talking about adults, and you do this game, if you will, where you actually exclude one of them and do not allow him or her into the ring. Okay, and then you find out from him or her, how does she feel when she was not allowed to come in. So if that could be an activity coupled with art, with creating art, so that people get their emotions out, because at the end of the day, David, and I'm just being straight up here, you know it's a person's heart is what really determines how they can respond to the ills that life throws them. Um, but art can be a vehicle
Mm-hmm.
that can help you and us begin to touch on something inside that was hidden. And in my work, there's work that I have to create. It's not there yet. Quite frankly, I'm being very transparent here. I'm almost afraid to try and do it because of what's in here. Okay, and I don't know if the other artists you're out there, if you've ever felt that way or not, but there's so much inside of us that has to come out. But it can be very cathartic. It can be very therapeutic, and to just get it out.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to backtrack for just a second. The movie Roots, I have not seen that movie yet.
Mm.
when I was in college, and folks, I was in North Carolina, Duke University, and when I was there, the KKK was active. I'll never forget, they were promoting on the radio, they were going to have a Klans march, etc. And I picked up the phone and said, "Is this for real?" When that movie came out, I was in college, and I specifically remember I actually cried, quite frankly, because I was torn with my, my faith here. I can't watch this movie because I'm supposed to love. And how can I love when I watch a movie, if I watch a movie that shows how we have been treated? Mm-hmm. So, but I'm at a point in my life now, I've matured, that I definitely can watch the movie and can get, but I share that to say this, that it's all about the heart. Mm-hmm. And decluttering the heart. Mm-hmm. And being willing to open your heart to the other person's heart and see what they have in common. And if art can be the vehicle to explore mm-hmm. together as an individual project or a group project, that could be one solution. But I do believe there's this phrase I'd like to say. If you probably didn't notice, I like quotes. Mm-hmm. You cannot legislate behavior, meaning you can pass laws and everything else, but at the end of the day, those laws don't legislate the behavior. Mm-hmm. It's the internal change that has to take place that will modify the behavior.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I hope you do at some point go, and I'm curious to see what you would do. I know personally, some of my work, I'm diving deep inside from some of the things that I've gone through, and when I share that, it is cathartic, but it's also empowering for other people. It's also connecting for other people who might feel they've gone through something, they could understand, they could relate. Oh, I always, there's something that I now could understand you better. So I think in those ways, and I still don't feel like, you said, like, when I was just telling another artist I was talking to the other day, Kaula, and, feeling like even though I've done a lot and you've done way more, I feel personally that I haven't really scratched the surface of what I am here to express. I can't even imagine, but.
And I think that's probably what most of us as artists feel. Mm-hmm. That I don't feel that I've only just begun. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that's the way most of us feel. The day that we feel that we have arrived, then that's the day that we will no longer be effective. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But if we're always, as you said, feeling that there's more, then we don't settle. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't settle. We just go for it. Mm-hmm. This is it. When I'm 100 years old, I'll be in my studio on top of a ladder. Okay, the pine box right next to the ladder, and then I keel over and nail it up and ship me out. That's it.
Oh my
God.
How
I'm going. Yeah, that's how I'm going.
Yeah, hopefully a lot sooner. And then also, it's easier to say something with art when people have, gone through something or faced a challenge, whether it's personal or on the outside, in society. We may not be able to be comfortable talking about it or questioning, but when we put it to art, when we put it to a song, when we put it to a paper, then it feels less intimidating. So I think art is also powerful in that way. When I do like the What's Your Elephant workshops and people are, sharing things, they're creating something, they're not really, they're able to be vulnerable a little bit more. And with vulnerability, then we could understand and we could say, okay, I see what the problem is. What are some suggestions with solution in that dialogue? So I think the art dialogue is just like,
the other thing, and you said it, dialogue. I think sometimes we fail to tell our story. And we fail to tell our story sometimes because we're afraid of what people may think about our story. But when we share our story, little do we know that there's a component of our story that someone else can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can say, wow, she went through this or he went through this. I thought I was by myself. So we're not alone. When
Mm-hmm.
others share their story, however it's done, either through art or through the spoken word or whatever, the fact that you're telling your story, it's going to benefit somebody
Mm-hmm.
and cause that person to hopefully look at themselves differently and not feel that they are alone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. How do you balance your work and your own mental health and well-being?
Good one. Well, I get up in the morning, I walk, I exercise, I take about 45 minutes to an hour. I read the word, I read the Bible, and I pray, and then I walk and I meditate on what I read, and um, I try to eat healthy. I don't eat a lot of junk food. Now, I will admit I had a frosty today, but and at the same time, you know, I have to tell myself that I'm good at time management and managing my time, but at the same time, I don't want to overstress myself. Um, so sometimes I have to know when to say no.
Mm,
Okay.
no.
And it's hard. I know it's hard, but because everybody will drain you and pull on you, and you have a heart, Nikki. I know that, to help and to do, and we all in some way do. But sometimes if you're not good for yourself, you can't be good for anybody else. So knowing when to say no, at the same
Mm,
time, knowing how much to put on your plate. And my wife says this. She says, just imagine life has a series of books on a bookshelf, and it just happened to be a bookshelf behind me here, but a series of books. Knowing when to take that book down and read it, or knowing when not to take that book down, and you're going to address the issue at another time, and you leave it on the shelf. So we
mm,
have to choose our battles. We have to know to choose when to fight, if you will, or when to sit back and, you know what, I'm not going to let that bother me. So that's how I try to do it. To live a balanced life. And am I perfect? No. Um, but that's kind of how I roll.
mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I know you have an event, you have something coming up on the 27th. Can you give us, I did put the link in the comments, but can you give us like a little teaser of what that is on the
Yes,
27th?
the 27th. I live in Tamarack, and the city of Tamarack approached me for a fundraiser for the for United Way, and so knowing that oftentimes when we talk about Black history, we sometimes don't talk about that this aspect of history, and that is how the African slaves, when they did quilting, their quilts had designs and patterns on them that were codes for the slaves to read or to know how to navigate to freedom through the Underground Railroad.
Mm,
So, I'll share a brief video about that. Faith Ringo, who's an African American artist, well known for her quilting and how she tells stories through quilts. She was born and raised in New York, and she wrote children's books, and she did quilts. Painted on quilts the stories of family reunions, etc. So and the Black women in Alabama, who were all descendants of slaves, they carried that tradition of quilting. The G's Ben's ladies in Alabama, how they are doing their quilts today that now are their quilts are in the Smithsonian and what have you. So I'm going to walk participants through that process of creating a paper quilt, very low budget, and there's a $10, I think it's 10 or $5 fee to register. It's a fundraiser for United Way, and just talk about that. So that's what's happening this Saturday, um, online. And as Nikki said, there's Eventbrite. You would need to register, and the city of Tamarack will then send you a link to participate.
Awesome. Thank you. And I did put that in. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, it's in the comment section along with some links to get in touch with George. So definitely check that out. If you had access to a time machine, where would you go and why? The past or the future?
Oh, I would go to the future.
Mm.
Oh yeah, I go to the future. Yeah, um, because I know about the past.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know about the past, the good, the bad, the ugly. Um, I'm fortunate to say though I don't think on the ugly stuff much. I always focus on the good, and so I believe that my future is bright. So therefore, I want to go to the future.
Mm.
My future's in here, so I want to bring that future out of me here and get there. Um, yeah. So no, if I in a time warp, future.
Nice, nice. Good answer. That's a nice perspective. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Well, George Gadson, you could Google me. My email address is georgegadson@gmail.com. And my website, georgegadsonstudios.com. So I warn you though, excuse me, if you Google George Gadson, there is a George Gadson in South Carolina who was arrested for violating his probation as a sex offender. That is not me. So just George Gadson, you see artists, etc. That's me.
Okay.
But yeah, please reach out to me, Facebook, and then Instagram at George Gadson, and that's how you can reach me. And my
Awesome.
phone number 954-822-5425.
Oh wow. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. George, it's been I will a half an hour show. I don't even want to look at the time, but
What time is it?
it we're
Oh,
like 9, almost 10 o'clock.
oh my! Are you
Yeah,
serious? Oh my gosh!
yeah.
Oh well,
But
Nikki, thank you.
yes,
Thank
absolutely.
you. You're doing an awesome job with what you're doing, and
You.
keep it up. You're just great. And so when you asked me, I knew that I had to, because I believe in what you're doing, and you're one of those artists that's out there doing it in the community, and so yeah, don't stop.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate just you being you, you being someone that I look up to. You've been someone that over the years, every now and then, I'm like, I got a question. Can you help me? And just been so open to it. So I do thank you for your guidance at any time I've ever had to come to you for anything. And just, the breadth of work that you've done in South Florida and throughout is just something definitely that I look forward to and I aspire to, and I just just grateful to know you as a person, and so grateful for
Uh,
that as well.
I feel the same about you. You know, I can tell you the different platforms and all this that you're doing. I'm thinking, whoa, that's not
So
my
you
lane.
guys are like, I'm a little crazy. That's my
That's
own.
not my lane. You do well. You do it very well. You do it very well. Yeah.
Uh, we have Rod. He said, "You're good, Miss Lopez. I planned on bailing a long time ago." Well, thank you for hanging out with us. Um, I just thought, as long as people are there, the show is half an hour. Sometimes it does go over. This is probably definitely the longest show,
Oh,
but I
okay.
just feel, you know, like I wanted to give that time and space, I don't follow all of the holiday things, but I like to, do things with intentions whenever possible. So February, you know, all the people that was on the circle were Black people, share different Black people, organizations, and, you know, artists and stuff like that. So I thought that, oh my God, to have George, you know, complete that, even though we know Black history is 365.
That's
But
right.
I think, you know, I think it was just a really, you know, it was an honor to have you on and to close out the month and the circle in a very powerful and meaningful way. So thank you, George, again. And thank you also for everyone who's been on. I see this is great. It's from this. It's from the group, so I can't see your name. I do apologize, but thank you for being here with us. Facebook, I've known you for many years, but I feel that in this presentation, I know who you are. Great job.
Thank you.
I'm trying to see if I could figure out who wrote that comment, because that would be interesting to see, since we're already over time anyway. Oh, that's Lorna.
Oh, Lorna, yes.
Yes.
One of the things I remember about Lorna is she was a great dancer. I think she did a lot of African dance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I remember you, Lorna. Yep.
Yes, and that was Gabe Ochoa from the YMCA saying, "Great job, thank you both, absolutely." But you guys kept me engaged, absolutely, absolutely. So you know, I'm really honored to be working, you know, alongside George with the LA Lee YMCA. You know, again, the project is the Sankofa project, you know, for the meaning of Sankofa and also for the many Sankofas. A lot of them, I think, if not all of them, George has done in the Sistrunk area. So if you're wanting to, there was a great conversation that happened a couple of weeks ago where George, Derek Davis, a few other elders from the community was on there. I definitely invite you to look it up. This Thursday, we're going to have a virtual oral history of Sistrunk. So if you go to the website, you'll see a link where you could, it'll be on Facebook Live under Niki Lopez Creative, but it will be a Zoom call. So if you were born and raised in Sistrunk, you want to share a photo, a memorabilia, a story, I invite you to join the Zoom. Now, if you want to be recorded, you need to be on the Zoom, but everybody else is welcome to log into the Facebook and, you know, and just be, just to hear that and, you know, giving more space to get more story and more history out there. So I invite you all to check this out. So again, that's on whatsyourelephant.org/Sankofa Arts Project. And so this project, the circle is brought to you by Niki Lopez Creative and What's Your Elephant. What's Your Elephant is a movement that uses the arts to create a safe space to talk about anything unspoken. So if you want more information about the project, you could go to whatsyourelephant.org. You could also go to Linktree /Niki Lopez 19. And I've been doing it every Tuesday for the past 3 years. But this coming March, I'm going to explore doing every other week because, you know, we got a lot of work on our plates and just, you know, giving a little space and a little breather. So in between the weeks, I'll be, replaying some of the older ones. You could always go to the podcast and see that. But again, this will be, it's going to go to the first and third Tuesday of the month, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And George, if you have any final words, closing thoughts.
Well, I would just like to say thank you again, Niki, for this opportunity. It's an honor. And for those of you out there listening, you know, just know that it's never too late to pursue what's inside of you. You have gifts and talents that the world needs to know. And just go for it. Don't stop. Thank you again, Niki.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for everyone who's tuning in from Facebook, from Periscope, from YouTube, and as well as those people who's going to watch it on the replay and on the podcast. please consider sharing this. There's a lot of information, a lot of inspiration into this particular episode of The Circle with George Gadson. And, you know, someone wants to get inspired, and you could be that change in that person's life just by sharing the video. It's a click, very free. So that's, you know, those are, you know, I always have this every now and then remind people free ways to support, you know, what we do. You could purchase art, you could come to an event, you could share a video, you could share a press release or anything, a piece of content that's also helpful. So again, everyone, thank you so much for, you know, being here. I know this is a very long episode, but I thought, you know, this is the only way to give George justice, you know. So yes. So I will see you all next week. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.